Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome if you're new. Thank you for taking time out of your day to check the video out. We have more PlayStation news, rumors, and leaks to go over and cover here today, so do me a favor before we dive into today's topics. If you end up enjoying the video or finding it informative, be sure to leave it a like. It helps the channel more than you know. And if you are new here, please consider hitting that subscribe button as well. We're starting here talking about a recent interview with Hideo Kojima where he talks more about the upcoming PlayStation espionage action title, PHYSINT, and it's actually really interesting to hear what he has to say. So this is being reported from WCCF Tech. They say Hideo Kojima has a lot of stuff on his plate, including Death Stranding 2 and the Xbox cloud-powered horror game OD, but perhaps the most exciting project for longtime fans is PHYSINT, a new action espionage game in the vein of Metal Gear Solid. Since partnering ways with Konami, Kojima has seemingly avoided a return to the stealth genre, so what convinced him to return? In his latest Hideo Tube video, Kojima provided a surprisingly raw answer for his return to stealth. During the pandemic, Kojima became sick to the point of needing surgery and making out a will. At a certain point, he thought his ability to make games may be over, which ultimately made him reassess his priorities. So I'm going to read to you the entire quote from Hideo Kojima. Quote, "So why did I decide to make PHYSINT? Well, first off, because I became independent, I wanted to do something with my own IP, so to challenge myself, I made Death Stranding. Then to create a franchise, I made Death Stranding 2. And I wanted to do something even newer, so I started working on OD. And since then, there have been a lot of new ideas, but in the last 8 years, every day on social media from users all around the world, people have asked me to create another Metal Gear and stuff like that. Then I fell ill in 2020. It was also during the pandemic, so I was sick and isolated during all of it. I even had surgery, and I thought I can't anymore. I was at my lowest point and felt like I couldn't go back to making games. I wrote a will too, and in that moment I realized that people die, but I turned 60 last year. I'll turn 70 in 10 years. I hope to never retire. Having said that, if the users desire it so much, I thought I should change my priorities a bit. I still want to do new things, but I decided to make an action espionage game." While Kojima has a blank check to make pretty much whatever he wants, it's nice to know that even in his lowest moment, he's still thinking about what the fans want. Kojima also briefly touched on the intersection of video games and movies PHYSINT will sit at. The way Kojima talks, it doesn't sound like it's going to be a multimedia project with separate games, movies, etc., but rather a single game that just happens to be very cinematic. How that will be achieved is unclear. Obviously, Kojima has gone very heavy on cutscenes at points in the past, but the more recent titles have put a heavier emphasis on gameplay. Quote, "We're going to make a new action espionage game in cooperation with Sony. It will be a game and a movie at the same time. Of course it will be a game, however. If your mother walks in and sees you playing the game, she'll think you're watching a movie. I'm not sure how far we can take it yet. I get many requests from Hollywood to make films, but I've refused them because I have my own company now. I can't leave for 1 or 2 years and go make a movie. The company would collapse. I was in a tough spot, and I talked to Guillermo del Toro about it, and he said, 'Hideo, what you're making is already a movie. Keep going as you are.' His words saved me. Though the output is a game, it won't be too different from movies." And so, yeah, I thought that this was really interesting stuff to be hearing from Kojima. It's very interesting to hear about, his health scare and how it's seemingly between that and what the fans were asking him for. He felt, I guess, inspired to kind of return to his roots and make another action espionage game in the vein of Metal Gear. And it's also interesting that he clarified, and I think it's good he clarified this because I think some people were thinking maybe this was actually going to be some kind of like multimedia project or something. He confirmed that PHYSINT is going to be a game. To me, what he seems to be referring to here is the fact that it's seemingly going to be a PlayStation 6 game. Essentially, what we could see is Kojima being one of the first developers to really try to push what we would consider like next gen. And I know some people are like, are we really talking about next gen? When we're not even like halfway through the PS5 gen. I know it's annoying, but still, this is the reality of a project like this. This is going to be a PlayStation 6 game, no doubt about it. And I could very well see Kojima and Sony, basically trying to push the absolute limit here in how realistic, how photorealistic this game could end up looking. So yeah, good stuff there. But talking about the PlayStation 6, we have a very interesting rumor to go over here regarding the PlayStation 6. This is again coming from WCCF Tech. Sony is planning to make the PlayStation 6 the most powerful console of its generation, and as such is not afraid to take as much time as needed to achieve this goal. In a new video shared by Red Gaming Tech this week, he provides some updates not only on Sony's next-gen system, but also on the PS5 Pro. While Sony has yet to announce its mid-gen refresh system, it seems more and more likely the console is indeed releasing, as third-party studios started receiving dev kits recently. While this isn't a confirmation that the system is coming out 100% as hardware is canceled all the time, the fact that dev kits are getting shipped out suggests that Sony is going through with the PS5 upgrade, which should be released later this year. As for the PlayStation 6, the system has been in the works for around 1 year, and its specs like CPU and RAM have not yet been finalized. Sony is talking with development studios as of now to tweak the system, which is almost assuredly going to be powered by AMD technology, as AMD is the only vendor Sony is currently considering, according to Red Gaming Tech. This is somewhat new, as Sony was talking with multiple vendors, including Nvidia, for the PlayStation 5 before settling on AMD. While the system specifications have yet to be decided, Sony is set on making the PlayStation 6 the most powerful console of its generation, and is thus ready to take things slowly, as the console's release window is said to be 2028. How this goal will be achieved remains unknown, but it is being said the Japanese company is tripling down on ray tracing and path tracing, the latter not universally supported due to its massive performance costs, machine learning, and AI, especially in regards to NPCs' interactions to offer innovative and advanced gaming experiences. So yeah, I definitely wanted to cover this because Red Gaming Tech, I think he's a pretty decent source when it comes to this type of stuff, and he seems to certainly have some contacts that are keeping him in the loop when it comes to Sony on the hardware side with the PS5 Pro and the 6 now. And this is very interesting to me if it turns out to be true, because it seems like Sony is very serious with the next generation PlayStation and making sure they make the most powerful console. That to me is actually not that surprising, considering that that is like a marketing beat that Microsoft has kind of really put a big emphasis on, that, you know, I think helped them certainly, at least to a small extent. But you can kind of see how Sony wants to make this a reality. And what's really interesting to me about this, more than anything, is the fact that right now we're hearing rumors that the next generation Xbox is happening, but it's happening in 2026. And now this rumor is claiming that the PlayStation 6 is being planned for a 2028 release. That's going to be a very interesting situation, because essentially what we might be looking at is the PS5 Pro coming out this year, and then 2 years later, the next gen Xbox coming out. And so we see a situation for at least 2 years. The PS5 Pro is kind of competing against the next generation Xbox, but then the PlayStation 6 is going to come out. And I mean, that's 2 years of development time beyond the rumored next gen Xbox. You really have to wonder like how much more powerful it would really be at that point. So really interesting times with these rumors and what's going on with these console manufacturers. But that is the latest rumor regarding the PlayStation 6. And so I just wanted to update you guys on that. We're moving on to the next topic, which is some really good news for Helldivers 2. I don't know how many of you guys are playing Helldivers 2. I've been playing it, and I've been really enjoying it. It's actually exactly what I hoped it would be. So I'm very satisfied. But this is being reported by Push Square. They say despite some inevitable technical troubles, Helldivers 2 is blowing up on the PS5 and PC, with its Steam numbers outpacing those of even God of War. Not content with being the best-selling game on Valve's popular storefront right now, the third-person shooter sequel peaked at about 81,000 players overnight, beating any previous record set by PlayStation Studios ports. Of course, it should be noted that its launch day and date on PC, where previous PlayStation ports have arrived years after their original release. These numbers will likely give Sony some food for thought as it considers whether there's more money to be made by putting all of its titles on PC the same day as they debut on PS5. This is the first entry in Sony's often discussed live service push, with tons of future updates plotted for the co-op title. So yeah, I just had to be sure to let you guys know that Helldivers 2 is off to a phenomenal start for Sony and for Arrowhead. In fact, it's going so well, and if it keeps this up, I wouldn't be surprised if Sony's considering trying to, negotiate with Arrowhead and see if they want to consider bringing them on as a, as a first party studio. But either way, it's nice to see this game succeeding. And I have seen a lot of people saying that this is going to make Sony maybe reconsider launching their single player games, because we already know that their live service games are launching day one on PC and PS5. They've already explicitly confirmed that. So the real question is, what about their AAA single player titles? I'm not necessarily sold on, because a game like Helldivers 2 is doing well day one, that's suddenly going to make Sony be like, oh, you know what? We should maybe, with Wolverine and Ghost of Tsushima 2 and, future titles, we should just launch them day one as well. I guess Sony would have to kind of weigh out the pros and cons. I am convinced that the reason why Sony's not going to immediately jump into releasing their big single player games day one onto PC is because I think Sony feels like those games do a lot of heavy lifting when it comes to PlayStation console sales, which Sony cares mostly about right now. And that's the important thing to understand. The console still is the main focus. Could that change in the future? Absolutely. But that's why I don't think they're necessarily going to rush into that just based off of what we're seeing here with Helldivers 2. I think what we're seeing here with Helldivers 2, Sony may have absolutely expected, and they might continue to expect this going forward with their live service games in particular. So just something to think about. But I wanted to be sure to cover this for you guys. Moving on to the next topic, we are talking about some sales data regarding PlayStation. This is being reported once again by Push Square. January seems to have been a strong month for Sony, at least in Europe, according to data pulled together by Games Industry. Last month saw successes for the platform holder in terms of both software and hardware. Not a bad way to kick off 2024. The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered did very well digitally and physically, apparently outweighing the launch of The Last of Us Part 1 by 2.5 times. In its favor was an upgrade path for the PS4 version and the fact that there are more PS5s in homes than there were when Part 1 arrived, but it's an impressive result nonetheless. It was January's biggest launch for a new game, but it was EA Sports FC 24 that took the top spot on the software chart overall. In terms of hardware, PS5 improved year over year thanks to vastly improved availability, and it's the only console on the up. Nintendo Switch and Xbox Series consoles were all down in January, putting Sony in a very healthy position. So, yeah, just figured I would relay this info to you guys, let you know how PlayStation performed in Europe for the month of January. Seems like they are off to a pretty good start. And yeah, if we get more data for other regions and territories, I'll be sure to update you guys on that. But that's going to do it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it informative. Leave it a like if you did. Subscribe if you're new. Hit the bell notification icon and feel free to share this video out on top of all that. But until next time, guys, take care.